This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andrews.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Hello and welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio. We also simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. You can find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We are here in the Heartland holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone. This is an exciting day. We're getting a huge snowstorm here in Kansas City, so we're hunkered down and glad to be with you all. And in this deepest part of the winter where it's dark and cold, this is the perfect opportunity to map out, plan the coming year ahead. And one of the best ways to do it is to know what are the planetary energies affecting the world and you personally. And then we're going to talk a lot about what's going on astrologically so you can plan the best year ahead. And then Patrick is also going to share with us a lot of visualization techniques that are really going to help you guys manifest the desires that you want. I mean, this is the year. You know, we can make New Year's resolutions about losing weight, whatever we want. This is the year to do it. So let's begin with talking about some really interesting astrological events going on that can really help you in your life. And the first one I want to talk about is the fact that the planet Saturn has now entered the zodiac sign of Capricorn. So this has to do with, first of all, how do we use time? I think that's a big deal for Patrick, isn't it? Time, because that's something that we have only a limited supply of.
Well, in some ways, if you look at the spiritual fact that we're eternal beings, we have nothing but time. But also you can look at the aspect that time is just an illusion that we created, although there are, obviously, if we look at the physics of it, there are some tangible parts of it, because really what we're measuring is how many times we orbit the sun, right? That's a year.
Yes.
So we just orbited the sun one more time. We're on our way to make another journey around our primary energy giver. So that's one thing we're going to talk about when we're talking about goals and why we separate or celebrate different rituals and things like that. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But so I think our time is important. And obviously we know that our physical experience here is limited, that nobody's going to get out of here alive. But at the same time, we can be comfortable to know that we are all spiritual beings that will continue on to other experiences after this life.
Well, right. So that is the paradox of time. It doesn't exist on one level because, yes, we're metaphysical beings, spiritual beings. We have no beginning and end. It's endless. And then on the other hand, while we're in the physical schoolroom here, we do have the limits of time. And so the Saturn in Capricorn is asking us to look at how we structure our time and how do we use our time. We all want more time. I do every day. I wish I had another hour. But it's so rather than being bound by that, it's how we use the time that we have. Are you focusing and spending the time on the things that you love? Do you wake up late? Do you go to, what is the best schedule for you? So this is an opportunity to look at your schedule. If you're not getting done what you want to get done in a day, what can you do to change that so that you do get done in a day what you want to get done? It's that simple. All the great successful people have taught time management. And I don't think there's one system for everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've used different systems. I've heard of a lot of different systems. For a long time, I used the Franklin Planner system, which I really liked because it taught you to prioritize your task list. I think that's one thing that is a key that I still believe is important, because so many people keep a to-do list and then we just try to knock off as many things as we can. But then that to-do list just keeps growing and growing because we think of more and more things. So the basic idea of a prioritized task list is you break it up into 3 categories. Your A's are those things that absolutely have to get done today. Now, be sparing on these. Realistically, we can usually only accomplish 2 or 3 big things in a day. The B's are the things that are important, but don't necessarily have to be done today, but they do need to be on your radar to be done soon. And then your C's are things that would be nice to do, but, it's not really going to be the end of the world if they don't get done. So just doing a simple ABC, and then out of your A's, number them 1 to 3. This absolutely has to be done first. This has to be done second. And go down your A, B's, and C's. That way, that creates a prioritized task list. And then you can have a running list where you can just bring a few over things that you're going to do that day, just so that you can kind of get that sense that you are accomplishing the things you set out to do that day. Whenever you accomplish a goal, it actually releases endorphins. And so that's kind of a natural high that you can get. And so that's one reason why people like to exercise and things like that. So goal setting and being able to click those things off your list do actually have a very positive effect on your physiology as well as your psychology. But whatever system, just find one that works for you. We're going to be talking in more details about other things you can do, but that's just a quick little warm-up.
And my key to using time effectively is just a little visualization technique. So you before you get out of bed, visualize, see yourself going through the steps that day of what you want to accomplish. In other words, you're showing your mind what you want it to do that day with images. And so that to me is huge, because once your mind already says, oh, okay, now I know what we're going to do today, most likely you're going to be able to accomplish that and move through it because you've already shown your mind a picture. So that's my little hack for using time well. Try it. If you like it, let us know on the Facebook group. Hey, I used that visualization time strategy and it worked great. So the other thing with Saturn and Capricorn has to do with structures. Now, Saturn is the structure of our life. It's the structures in our mind, how we structure things. And so it's time to look at, are those structures that you've built up in your mind for living your life useful to you or not? If not, it's time to dissolve those structures and build something new. So by a structure, like globally, we could talk about the structures in the world, like the government's a structure. The educational system is a structure. The financial system is a structure. We know a lot of those aren't working. So actually, on a universal level, we could see further disintegration of some of these structures, caving in. But personally, you have structures in your life. You have your job. That is a structure. That's how the structure through which you make money, the structure through which you give your gifts and talents. Do you like that job structure? If you don't, let it disintegrate, build something new. Buckminster Fuller always used to say, you cannot, if a structure isn't working, you can try to change it and mess with it, but the best way is just start a whole new structure. So if you're not happy with your job structure, just create a whole new one. If you're an entrepreneur, look at the structures. Do you need more structures? That's the one thing. Patrick and I, as entrepreneurs, I always find myself sometimes feel like I'm swimming in this sea and I don't know where to go because there's so many things to do. So as an entrepreneur, we need some kind of structure, mentor, something to guide us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to kind of build on your quote from Buckminster Fuller, which I really like, Einstein had another similar quote, which I always refer back to, which is that you can never solve a problem from the level of that problem. You always have to rise above it so that you can get a better perspective. And I think that's a very metaphysical perspective. And when you look at Einstein and his philosophy, he was very metaphysical. In fact, I was really fascinated when I was studying physics to find out that a lot of the early fathers of quantum physics, whenever they would get stuck in the lab, they would always turn to metaphysics to really understand what they were seeing in the laboratory. So physics and metaphysics are all very closely entwined. And those of us in the spiritual field and professions know that very well because we work with it every day. And I believe that there's more and more awareness of the unity between science and spirituality, that the two seem to be growing closer and closer together. That's one of my goals in life, is to help bridge that gap. And I believe both are really looking for the same thing, but just going at it from different angles. So a lot of this, when we're looking at how we're using our time, how we're creating in our life, we're activating the creative abilities of our mind. And again, it all goes back to the idea that we are all spiritual beings. Now, I know for a lot of us, that's just an idea. It's something that we were taught and many of us believe, but there are actually things that you can do to demonstrate that to yourself. For example, for me, meditation is the crown jewel of all the spiritual practices because I have, through my metaphysical studies, learned many different things. And I talked about astral projection on one show. And that was an experience for me that was really eye-opening because it demonstrated to me for a fact that my consciousness can exist and travel separate from my physical body. I'm still connected to the body, but I can travel outside of the body and experience things on a different level. So that was a really good experience. And lucid dreaming is another one where you can actually wake up and be conscious in your dream state so that you can experience that state, that realm of consciousness that you're in, and then wake up and come back to your life. All those things are things that anybody can experience. The only catch is that it does take some discipline and training. So it isn't something that all of us are naturally geared to. You're not necessarily going to have spontaneous experiences, although many people do. And it's good to talk to them, read stories when they're sharing their story about things that happened that showed them, kind of open the door to the spiritual realm. But any of us, all of those abilities, it is our human existence, our human nature, our human birthright to be aware of all those experiences. And so when we just take the time, and it's some of the beginning things, learning how to focus our mind, learning how to take control of our attention, that's one thing that we talk about a lot, that with all this technology, we are open to more and more distractions than humanity has ever experienced probably in its history. And so it's very important, more important than ever now, to really learn how to capture our attention, to get it back under our control so that the media isn't always leading us around where they want us to go. And so we can actually keep our mind focused on the things that we want. And that's one of the main things we're going to be focusing on today, as well as some things, just looking at the energies, the influences that are coming at us in this brand new year.
All right. So in addition, we've got Pluto also in the sign of Capricorn. So I want you guys to write down these 3 questions. So first of all, write down the question with Saturn. How can I use my time more effectively? The second question for Saturn was, what structures in my life need to disintegrate, and what can I build anew? All right, now with Pluto and Capricorn, I've got some questions for you guys to write down. The first one is, what do I need to face or admit? So Pluto goes down to the depths and brings up our shadow, brings up those parts of ourselves where we might have some negative thoughts that we don't want to admit that we have. So it's asking us, Pluto and Capricorn, to face or admit some things. Once it comes out in the open, it's not in the shadow anymore, you can deal with it better. The second question is, what do I no longer need to defend? All right. So a lot of people, you've probably heard, oh gosh, you're so defensive, right? When you say something to someone and they get all in a tizzy about it. Whenever you act like that, that's what you're trying to defend. So look at, what are you trying to defend, and what do you no longer need to defend? It takes a lot of energy to defend something. And so Pluto, we're hiding something often. And Pluto says, you don't need to defend it. Just do it. Just be it. Okay. The third question with Pluto and Capricorn to ask ourselves is, what am I experiencing a crisis in? Or excuse me, where am I experiencing a crisis? Pluto often leads us into crisis. And in Capricorn, this is probably going to be a big deal. So where are you experiencing the crisis? This is where you need to focus in the new year to resolve that. Now, tomorrow, this is so great we're doing the radio show today, because tomorrow on the 12th, we have Saturn, which is going to conjunct Pluto. So we're probably already feeling the effects today, and beginning to, right? The last time that both Saturn and Pluto were in Capricorn and conjuncting each other was 500 years ago. So if we look back in time, we can learn from history, based on the astrological events that were occurring then, what could possibly be occurring now. No surprise, it has to do with abuse of power. That is the theme. So we're seeing it everywhere, right? In government, it's all over. I don't even need to tell you where it is. We're looking at corruption. the collapsing of the old paradigm of corruption, deceit, betrayal, and something new being born. So it's coming to a head right now as we are on the air today, because Saturn is so close to Pluto right now. And so we have to ask ourselves, what cause do we want to back? You know, I really think it's time for everybody, if you want to utilize this Saturn and Pluto, I invite you to look at the world and say, where do I want to help where there's abuse of power? Where do I want to help bring freedom and honesty? You know, that's how we can use the Saturn and Pluto. Maybe it's just in your own personal life. Where are you abusing power or other people? Or are you even abusing yourself? You know, we abuse ourselves all the time. So I invite you to use that Saturn and Pluto together. Patrick, where do you see, let's just share our own personal causes that we're interested in. For me, it's health freedom. I've been studying this topic for many, many years. I love natural health, and it's under attack right now by various groups trying to mandate different types of health protocols on the American people. It's worldwide, not just American people. So I am standing for freedom of health. Let us make our own choices. Don't tell us what to inject or put into our bodies. Let this be our own choice. That's my Saturn-Pluto cause, if you will.
So my focus is really helping people to create what they want in their lives. And there's a lot of focus on social justice and economic justice. And so sometimes people start looking at equality, and they think that just throwing money at the people that don't have the money is going to fix everything. But I found so many times over and over and over again, that's a huge mistake. It's really all about the education. I believe that people need to learn how to create what they want in their life. If you look at a lot of the difficulties that people have, it is true that people don't have equal access to all the same things. So, for example, if you grow up in a household that, let's say it's a middle class, upper middle class or something like that, it's, you probably didn't have to worry about paying the utility bills, or you didn't worry about where your next meal was going to come from. So that's definitely an advantage that you need to take into consideration. When we're looking at people who don't have those same advantages. But at the same time, it all really comes down to each person being able to create what they want in their life. It's really a personal dignity issue that nobody feels good about just taking handouts. When people learn the path to be able to create those things and stand on their own 2 feet, I've always found that is when people are at their best. That's when they feel the best about themselves. They know that they can take care of themselves. They can take care of their family. And really, that's what we all want. And so I have long said that there are far more things that we have in common than differences. I mean, if you look at all the people all over the planet, genetically, there's just a fraction of a percentage of difference between each person. Most things are just cosmetic, different hair color, eye color, skin tone. All these things are just superficial. We are all one race, the human race. And when we look at that, when we look at the fact that, these people we want to consider our enemies, people who are even attacking us, it's like they want the same things for their family. They want to be healthy. They want to have a good life for themselves and their children. And so when we recognize that about each other, it's just like when the Iron Curtain fell during the Cold War. The United States was pitted against the Soviet Union. They were the great enemy. But my aunt, for example, traveled to the Soviet Union. She found that they were very loving people. It's just one government pitted against another government, one ideology pitted against another ideology. But when you got to know the people, they were great people. They wanted a healthy, happy life for themselves, for their children. They wanted to be safe. They wanted to be able to have fun, enjoy things. And so they were not so different than we are. And when we really understand that, I believe, that's going to be a huge step in the right direction toward creating the kind of world that I think inside we all want. And it all starts with being able to create the things that you want in your life. And, as long as those things don't interfere with the free will of another person, then I think everybody's on the right track.
I love, Patrick, that because you're really talking about perception, right? We have these perceptions or stereotypes of people, and that leads me into the next big astrological event, which is Uranus and Neptune coming together, making an aspect in March, May, and December. And so Neptune is all about our perception of the world, and we know that everybody can see the same event and we all perceive it differently. Neptune is our spiritual eyes. It's what we want to see, oftentimes not what really is there, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can really practice clear seeing to perceive accurately. And when it combines with Uranus, Uranus is a planet of upheaval and change. And so what we're being asked to do when these two planets make an aspect together is to change our perception of the world. Just a little simple thing. So just as the example Patrick was giving, many, many years ago with the Iron Curtain, we had this perception of maybe what Soviet Union or the Russian people were like. Well, I'm asking you all, if you want to write down this question, what am I misperceiving in my world? Okay, that's how you can best use this astrological event. Here's another question. What are my myths of the world? And this is a biggie, right? Maybe you think the world's an evil place. Maybe you think the world is a place of scarcity. We've all had beliefs embedded in us since we were kids. Our minds were like sponges the first 7 years of our life. And so we've absorbed a lot of beliefs and attitudes that perhaps are not true. Remember, a belief is just a belief. What is truth anyway, right? It's your mind believes what you tell it. So if you tell your mind we live in an abundant universe, then we do. So that is the opportunity. Now, I just want to take you back in time a little bit. About 171 years ago, we had Uranus and Neptune making an aspect together. And what was going on then was a time of revolutionary change where people were fighting against colonialism. They did not want to be ruled by other countries. Each country wanted to overthrow colonialism. And so it was a call for freedom, okay? A call for freedom. And that's kind of what this Saturn-Pluto I was talking about as well is, what do you stand for? What corruption do you want to remove so that we can live in a freer world? And so similarly, we have a theme here of changing our perception, which can be just as powerful as pioneering a cause that's trying to make change. It all starts within. And so if we don't change our perception of things, it's like trying to put whiteout on the computer screen. You need to make the change from within the computer, not on the screen. And so that's what Uranus and Neptune are allowing us to do. So these are coming up in March, May, and December. So what perception of the world do you want to change? What are you misperceiving? That's the question. All right. So I do want to also go over the retrogrades this year. We have a few minutes before the break. We'll begin this. A retrograde is an opportunity for us to reflect and slow down. The planet, when it goes retrograde, slows its pace down. And so it's an opportunity, depending on the planet, to go within and process what that planet's about. So I'm just going to start with the planet Venus. It goes retrograde. You want to write these dates down, May 13th to June 25th. So that period of time is an opportunity for us to reassess what we value. It may mean also to reassess just our relationships in general and how we communicate in our relationships. So during May 13th to June 25th, you may experience delays or confusion in relationships and financial affairs because Venus rules finances. It's not a great period to get married, folks. So if you are trying to plan your wedding for 2020, I would advise not between May 13th and June 25th. Also not a great period to undertake a new financial deal. So we go within, we don't do anything, we just reflect within on the relationships. That's the best way that you could do this Venus retrograde period. It's also a time to really look at, what do I value? Do I value a big home? Do I value family? Do I value my job? Do I value my body? Well, whatever you value, put time into it. If it's your body, give it good food that month. Give it a massage, whatever it needs. If you value your relationship, then what do you need to put into that relationship to show you value it? Is it a date night out with your hubby? Whatever it is. If you value art, then go to a museum during that time period. This is the way that we can use this Venus retrograde. Is it the time to jump out there and date online? Probably not. But go within and decide, what do you want in a mate? And then when it goes direct after June 25th, that's the time you come out and you say, okay, I'm going to sign up for online dating, or I'm going to go talk to that person I've been interested in meeting. That's when you take action, but allow yourself to process. We all are interested in love and romance and perhaps want to start something new this year. That's great. Whenever you start it, just know that when we get into that May-June period, take a step back a little bit, reassess all your relationships, not just your romantic ones. I'm talking about relationships with family, with children, with coworkers, all of those.
So when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions. We're going to talk about some of the different ritual cycles that we go through. We have kind of a theme here of time, since we're at the beginning of a new cycle. This is one that is celebrated widely among many people around the world. And yet we also have those personal cycles that we celebrate, like anniversaries and birthdays. And so we're going to talk about some of those different rituals that we go through this time of year, as well as things that we can do to help us stay on track as we're kind of resetting our goals and looking forward to the new year. So we are coming up on the break. And so while we're on break, you can check out more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com. Again, that's intuitiveschool.com. You are listening to Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio, being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, and we will see you on the other side.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. TLR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome back from the break. If you're just joining us, this is Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Kathryn Andrews, and we are coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, among others. We are talking about New Year's resolutions and rituals and astrological influences. And so are there more influences that we need to be aware of?
Well, a couple more. I want to alert you that Mars, the planet of action, actually goes retrograde. It doesn't really like it because Mars always wants to be moving, but we do get an opportunity to slow down. September 9th, write this down, everyone. September 9th to November 13th, Mars, the planet of action, actually goes retrograde and slows down. So when this happens, we need to reassess how we use our energy and how we get things done. So ask yourself the question, do I like how I'm getting things done? Am I efficient? Is there a way for me to use my energy differently? Do I get what I want? Mars is about going after what you want. And so if you're not getting what you want, this Mars retrograde is an opportunity for you to reassess how you do that. All right. So don't assert yourself necessarily during this time. It's a time to reflect on how you assert yourself. So when it goes direct on November 13th, then you can go out there and conquer the world. But you need this time to reassess. So it's an opportunity for us to also look at how we could be impulsive, how we use our anger. Do we stuff it? Do we explosively express it? It's about our sexuality. How do we use our sexuality? Are we happy with that? It's about inner courage. Mars is courage. It's that planet that allows us to say, I can do this. I can conquer this mountain. I can conquer this goal, whatever it is. So it's your time to figure out, what do you want from life and how are you going about getting it? That's huge, right, Patrick? And your co-ruler, because your Scorpio, is Mars.
Right. Yeah. So, So, I mean, with the Scorpio, there's always this kind of focus on creation. And then, like you were talking about with some of the influences, it has to do with things kind of being destroyed and going away. And Scorpio is a big influence on creation and destruction. A lot of times we have to destroy things to move them out of the way. If you ever watched any of those home repo shows, they always go in and they're like, this is demo day. And they're all, going on with their sledgehammers, breaking down the walls, ripping out the cabinets and breaking the sinks and getting everything out of the way. So a lot of times it seems like there's this big mess being created. But what you're really doing is clearing the space so that the new can come in. Sometimes we even do this unconsciously. And so it may seem like things in your life are kind of falling apart, but a lot of times, there's always that saying, when one door closes, another one opens. Sometimes subconsciously, we're actually breaking free of some of our old patterns because something new is already right there in the wings, just getting ready to come into our life. That's just part of the natural creative process, but sometimes we're just not aware of that.
Yeah, it's cool insight. And also, if you are an Aries, because Mars is your ruler, it co-rules Scorpio, both of those signs will really have an interesting period when it goes retrograde, September 9th through the 13th. You may actually find that your life kind of stagnates, but that's only your perception. If you use this retrograde to your advantage, you can go within and, like Patrick was saying, reassess, how you do everything in life. And you'll come out fresh and even more powerful than before you went into that retrograde.
So one thing I just wanted to mention about retrograde, I know there's probably a lot of scientifically minded people out there who are like, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? The planets don't actually slow down. Whenever a planet is going retrograde, the planet itself physically is obviously on a standard track around the sun. But what we're really talking about is the relative motion of that planet to the Earth, which is where we are. The perception of it is that it is slowing. And so just like, Einstein was talking about relativity, showing that all motions are moving relative to each other. And so the astrology really gets into more of the metaphysics, the energy that is beyond the physical, the superficial physical energy, or the energy of the different dimensions that science hasn't really even barely gotten into at this point. And so when we're looking at that relative motion, that relative motion slows the perceptual motion to where we are. So yes, we know that the laws of physics don't change. The actual motion of the planet physically isn't changing, but the motion of the planet relative to the planet that we are on, the Earth, is slowing. And so obviously if we were on a different planet, the energies would be different. So, who knows when we're at the point where we can travel to other star systems and we're on other planets. Who knows? The astrology may be completely different. That will be a fascinating study at that point. But for thousands of years, this has been our home. So, the astrology is all kind of based at the central focal point of the Earth being the center of our influences. And so that's just kind of a little aside, just kind of looking at the science as well as the spirituality of it.
Oh, that's awesome insight. Yeah, for people who want to understand what does it really mean, a retrograde? I mean, I'm an astrologer, and it took me a while to really understand that concept. But for most of us, putting the science aside, we just need to understand that it's a time to slow down. I have the image in my mind of a turtle when a particular planet goes retrograde. Think of the turtle. And so the last retrograde I want to talk about, and by the way, these retrogrades are awesome opportunities to visualize, okay, because it's not taking like physical action, but it's taking the mental action. And Patrick's going to tell us about some cool visualization things. But the planet Mercury, which is the planet of communication, most people have heard Mercury retrograde. That's kind of like a buzz phrase now. It just means that everything about communication slows down. So yeah, there's the opportunity or the potential that your email doesn't arrive. Your snail mail is slower, misunderstandings between you and others. So the dates are February 16th through March 9th, June 18th through July 12th, October 13th through November 3rd. So those are 3 periods. That February 16th one is coming up here real soon to slow down, reassess how you communicate, especially communication within. Do you even talk to yourself? Do you meditate? Do you listen within? As well as how you relate to others. So, Patrick, you want to talk about how could we use some of these retrogrades to visualize?
Well, the way I always describe it is the creation process is a lot like breathing. When we're going through our day and we're conscious of our breath, you just can't keep breathing out all the time. So if you think about breathing out as that time when we're really putting forth a lot of physical activity, exerting ourselves toward creating the things that we want in our lives, you breathe out and then you reach a certain point and you just naturally know that you have to breathe in. Unfortunately, sometimes we get into this mode where we are just thinking about things completely physically, and so we're just breathing out all the time. So we're just forcing ourselves, and that takes a toll on your mind as well as your body. And so when we are creating, there are these natural times when we need to take an in-breath. So that's like, what she was talking about with making use of those retrograde times. We can do it any other time, during each day or during the week, just taking some time to really reflect inward. We need to take an in-breath. We need to create a clear focus of what it is that we are creating, why we are creating that. Okay, that's the purpose, and that connects us emotionally to our creation. And then identifying the physical steps that we need to take to create that. Then we're ready to take action. So that can happen any number of different ways. There isn't like some magic formula that this is the way you do it every time. We all know that life is organic. Things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes we have to improvise. Those are all very natural things that occur. But we understand the process. If you feel like you're hitting a brick wall, that may be the sign that it's time to just take a step back for a minute, go for a walk, sit down and meditate, whatever it is that you do to connect with your inner self. For some people, it's fishing. Some people, it's going on a hike. So do that thing that you need to do to reconnect with nature, to reconnect with your inner self. If you can take some time to really clarify that image in your mind, and just also understand that when we are creating in our life, the image can change. I mean, I had an experience where I understood the process of visualization really clearly one time when I was shopping for a new car, and I realized that as I was test driving these new cars, I would have one in mind, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll try this one. And then I would test drive it, and I realized I really don't like the way this car handles. So then I'd check out another one. Oh, I really don't like the cargo space in this one. So as I had an idea and I went forward with trying it out, that each step that I took clarified my image. So by the time I was ready to buy that new car, which was a SUV, by the way, and I had a very clear idea. I knew exactly what I wanted. And so that final process of procuring that car was really easy because I had a very clear idea. And the times when I've been the most successful at creating things in my life, I've seen that I go through that same process of clarifying that image as I take each step. So when we understand that, we realize that there isn't a specific timeline that happens. It's not a matter of if it will happen. It's only a matter of when this will happen. So part of it is being flexible with the things as they're coming to you in your life, and also not just laying back and waiting for things to come to you. It's a blend of creating a clear image and then taking the next step that's in front of you.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the universe rewards action. So a lot of times when people just get into metaphysics, they are under this impression that you just visualize it and it's going to happen. Sometimes, depending on the visualization, that's possible. I'm not saying it's not. But depending on what that is, let's say you want a new house. I mean, a house just doesn't come to you. You probably have to make an appointment with a realtor. You got to go out there and look for one. But it means the universe is going to bring it quickly to you. I know when I went to buy my first ever condominium, I actually found it on the first day that I went out house shopping because I had done the inner work. I visualized. I knew exactly what I want. I was crystal clear. I had made several appointments with a realtor before going out. And so it cut down, people say, I don't have time to visualize. Well, let me tell you, that visualization cut down the time that I spent looking for houses, physically going around town, because I had such a clear vision and I'd been visualizing it. So boom, that first day, I think I looked at 5 condos, and it was the second one. And I said, this is it. And I ended up buying it. So that's the power of being clear, and it will, in the end, save you time, even if it means each day, you give up 5 minutes of your schedule to visualize.
So one thing I did want to mention too, because this is a pitfall that I see very frequently, and I've been through it myself, so I have learned from experience as well. But one thing I've learned is when you are creating something, whether it's a new job, for example, or a relationship that you're working on creating, that it can often be a mistake to get attached to a specific company, for example, or a specific person for that relationship, because there may be unseen things like the culture of that company may not really be healthy for you, or some of the personality aspects of that person may not really be ideal for a relationship. So one of the things I learned is that if there's something that you like, then you can include that in your image, and you can say something like this, because it could be that company is a great fit for you, and if you are visualizing something like that, then everything may fall into place so that you actually do get a job at that particular company, or you may actually get into a relationship with that specific individual. But it also leaves the door open, so if there's something that you don't know, that your subconscious will know what is a really good fit for you. So as long as you are open to the best fit for you, and you don't get too attached to one specific person or one specific company, for example, then it leaves the door open for you to more quickly move into that ideal situation or relationship. Have you had experiences with that?
Oh, totally. I mean, in our conscious mind, we think we know what we want, and I had an experience with a job once where I was teaching and I wanted the same class for next year, and I was sure that was going to be the best route for me. And I kept trying to push it with my supervisor, kept saying, no, we're going to change it around. And so I had to let go and say, okay, I can't fight this, but the only thing I can do at this point is visualize what I want that next year, school year to be like. So I continued doing that. And sure enough, the new class that I was given met my visualization way better than the one that I thought that I wanted. So you're totally right on with that. That's a huge key to visualization. So what's the next step for people to start visualizing for 2020?
So one of the things I wanted to talk about briefly is just different rituals that we go through. So we talked about how this is a brand new year. Another beginning cycle that people often recognize as a kind of a new starting point is birthdays. But I think the new year tends to be more universally identified as just kind of this chance to start over with a clean slate. It's almost like a whole new school year for students, because it's like no matter how the previous year went, the brand new school year is kind of like a fresh start. It's like you can come in, you can be a new person, and try to do things differently. So let's say if you didn't really apply yourself that well previously last year to really accomplish your goals, this is kind of like a mental reset point where you can say, okay, well, last year didn't go so well, or I didn't accomplish this or that, but this is kind of like a fresh start. So I'm going to kind of get myself together. Now, one thing that often happens, though, is that people notoriously set what they call resolutions. And I've really come to find that resolutions don't work for a lot of people. And so I really prefer to look at it more as a creation process where, sometimes people in their businesses even go through a quarterly creation process where they're setting short-term goals. And I would highly recommend that if there are specific things you're wanting to create this year, to break it up into maybe shorter term goals. Maybe just look at the first quarter of what you want to create and what your goals are going to be to accomplish just this first quarter, maybe from now through the end of March. And so when we do that, there's several different techniques, and visualization and visioning are two techniques that I want to talk about. But with the visualization, we talked about the prioritized task list that may be a little bit more involved than you may want to get into the first time out, or just to be able to, have something kind of concise to put on your bathroom wall or your office or wherever it is that you would see it very often. So what we're going to call this is a 10 most wanted list. So you're going to just have maybe actually the first, maybe top 5 or 10 things that you want to create in this first quarter, or maybe even things that you just want to make sure that you get created by the end of the year. And so how you can prioritize these things, you're just going to create a list. If you have more than 10 things, I would put them on a pending list so that you can add those in later as you create some of them. And if you don't have 10, that's fine. Just go with as many as you're able to get. But then it's also important, like I mentioned, to prioritize them. So if you look at your list, let's say you have 5 things, go through that list and say, okay, I've got 5 things on here, but if I could only create one of these things and I had to choose one out of these 5, which one would that be? That's going to go in your number 1 spot. And then you're going to go through and say, okay, if I could create one more thing off this list, what would that be? And you're going to keep doing that until you have all 5 things in their proper order. Now, what this does is it's very practical in some ways because it lets you know that if you have a limited amount of time, then what are you going to spend your time on? So if you keep spending time on number 5 and you never spend time on number 1, you need to look at, am I really being honest with what is my highest priority? Or you might examine, why am I avoiding spending time on that? There might be some things like you're afraid of failure or things like that you might need to look at. And those self-discoveries are often an important part of our creation process. They help us to work through those challenges that we are meeting in terms of creating the things that we want in our life. So have you ever used a 10 Most Wanted list before?
Of course, all the time. I just did one the other day. I had to update mine. Some of them I carried over that I have not accomplished yet. But one of the things I think is really helpful with the 10 Most Wanted list is that you break down the goals so that it's not something that's going to take you, 3 years to accomplish, because it's just going to sit on your list and you're going to feel like you're not making traction. So, for example, if you want a new house, break it down and say, okay, what's the first step? Well, I want to meet this amazing realtor who is not pushy, who goes with the flow and is flexible and responds to my demands. And then it's really fun when you meet them because you cross that out and then you put the next step, or you can just break it down and put it all on the list, meet a realtor. Number 2, find a house that has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. So you want to have, you can have some longer term goals, but I would say they should all be able to be accomplished within a year. Then have really short term ones, like maybe within the next week. You want to get your house painted. You want to get your bedroom organized, and then you get to cross it off. And like Patrick said, if you've had a contingency list, you transfer those items onto the new list.
So where's your favorite place to keep your 10 Most Wanted list so that you know where it is and you can see it often?
Well, actually, in the bathroom, in the mirror, right behind my jewelry box. So every morning, I can't help not seeing it because I'm getting ready for wherever I'm going that day.
Yeah, I've used a number of different places. For me, a lot of times the bathroom works because when you get ready in the morning, you're always there at the beginning of the day, the end of the day. That's a really good time to affirm what you want. So you can just put it up there on the mirror or wherever it is that you get ready. Like I said, the office works really well. Some people like to put it on the refrigerator. Some people in their planner, in a place where every time they open up their planner, it's right there. And so, that's an important thing. The most important thing is that it keeps it top of mind. And so even if you're not able to sit down for 4 or 5 minutes to create a clear image in your mind of what you want, it is important to always keep those things top of mind, because when we're talking about discipline, it's really about making choices. So every time that you have the choice to, sit down and binge watch, an entire season of your favorite show on Netflix, or going to, a place where maybe you want to write a book, or you want to get a new job because you're not happy with your job, or maybe you're not happy with your relationship or something like that. Whatever it is that you want to change, taking a step. And again, when you see that step and you know what to do, that's the time to take action. And if you don't see a clear step, maybe that's time to just take an in-breath and just kind of relax and be with yourself for a little bit. Go walk with nature like we were talking about, sit down and meditate, because those are those moments, those quiet moments when we get the inspiration of what the next step is. Now, another thing that you can do, there's something called a treasure map or a vision board. Now, these work a little bit differently. A treasure map is where you can have maybe 10 things on there, or if you wanted to do one for a whole month and come up with something to do every day for a whole month. I've seen 30-day treasure maps. But basically, you create almost like a little path. So it almost looks like a little children's game board where there's this little path from your starting point all the way to what it is that you're creating. And so each step on that path, you're going to take an action. So you may do it for just as many actions as you see. Maybe you can see 10 clear steps, like when Kathryn was talking about getting the house. So getting a realtor that you know and trust would be a good first step. And then going house hunting and clarifying what it is that you want in your house. And all of those things would be steps toward creating your goal of that new house. And so the end of your treasure map would be that new house. That would be the end of your path. And that's when you've created it. Now, a vision board works a little different because you can use this for a number of different things. You could use this for a new career. And so you're going to cut out pictures that represent all the different things that you want in that new career. Or if it's a relationship, you can create pictures, cut them out of magazines and things that represent all the different aspects of the person that you want that relationship, that you want to be in a relationship with. And so you can also do it just with your life in general. But that one board is going to have just all these visual images. And we've talked about when we do dream interpretation that the mind works more effectively with images. In fact, all the words that we use all just describe different images that we have. And so it's just a way of being able to describe an image that I have in my mind so that then you can understand what that image is and see it a little bit better in your mind. So whether it's a treasure map or a vision board, those are things that you might consider doing sometime between now and the end of the month, just to help give you clarity in the things that you want to create in your life.
I love that treasure map idea, Patrick. I'd totally forgotten about that, but I think that's good because a lot of times we make a vision board and we're like, oh yeah, but it's never going to happen. If you put on your vision board, you want to go to Peru or something. It's so quick for the conscious mind to drop in there and say, yeah, but you'll never do that. So when you make the treasure map, you've actually mapped out the steps and you're like, well, wait a minute. This is possible if I follow these steps. So actually, I'm glad you said that because you can also do that treasure map in conjunction with the list of things you want. Because like I said, breaking them down, you may not know the little pieces, all the steps, but the treasure map will show you the steps. And then you can just transfer those steps into words on your a list of 10 things that you want.
Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about is visualization as compared to visioning. There's a different use of it called visioning that's come up, and I just want to describe what the differences are. And you can use one or the other, which one resonates with you the best, or you can use them both. I like to use them both at different times. Visualization is that point where we can just sit down and sit in quiet silence, reflecting on what we want, and then creating a very clear image. Now, in my mind, the image is what really activates our motivation toward taking that action. So I'm a big believer in visualization. So you can just take a few breaths to relax, make sure that you're nice and relaxed in a comfortable position. And it doesn't take a long time. You could just spend 4 or 5 minutes. And it's almost like daydreaming, but it's a little bit more disciplined and controlled because you want to bring your attention back to what you want to create if your mind starts to wander. You don't want to just let your mind wander aimlessly. You want to keep your mind focused on what it is that you want to create in your life. Visioning, on the other hand, you are focusing on what you want to create, but then visioning is a little bit more of a receptive process, whereas visualization is a little bit more active in a active use of the mind. But with visioning, you're going to hold that image in your mind, but then you can ask yourself questions like, well, what is it that I need to do to take this next step? And then you're going to listen for the answer. And so it's almost like a discussion that you're having with your inner self, which is what I really like about it. So visualization is where you are communicating to your inner self what it is you want to create. And then visioning or meditation even can be used to listen back for what is the next good step.
Yeah, that's awesome. And they're both important. So this has been amazing, Patrick. If anybody has goals about health, tune in next week. We have David Matthews, who will be talking about a whole plant-based food diet next week.
All right. And you can always find out more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com. This has been Spirit's Journey, live on Truth Frequency Radio, Simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Have a great week.
Goodbye for now.